All right, so what I figured we'd talk about today is some fun terminology, audio history type of stuff. So you might have heard the term wall of sound before, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, I don't know, but there are actually multiple versions of the wall of sound. So I thought this was kind of an interesting term to talk about today because it touches upon, different fields within the audio world, and I think it's just interesting, whenever you look at the history of how different people have done their productions or their shows or what have you. So let's talk about the wall of sound. Okay, so the first two that I'll talk about are probably the two ones that people know the most about, right? So, first of all, we have the Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound, right? So, you might have heard of people talk about this. And basically, what that is it's more within the live sound field, right? Because what it is the Grateful Dead would set up these massive, like, speaker arrays, speaker systems for their live shows. So, the idea was to literally get a wall of sound that was blasting people, So, it was all about the performance, about the live show, and it was about giving this like powerful wall of sound for the audience. So, that doesn't really delve into the world of like science experiments or recording or what have you, but it's still really interesting and it's really cool. And, it's kind of, if you think about it, it's a predecessor of the live sound arrays that we see today. So the Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound, this is what it looked like. Let's see if I can kind of zoom in. So it was this massive setup of like a whole bunch of different speakers. And this was really like a new thing back then, and it's still kind of a new thing if you really think about it. But you can really see looking at it, how it's a predecessor of these live sound arrays that we have today. So that's one type of wall of sound, right? I'll just show you a couple of these photos here. It's pretty cool. I mean, I'm not old enough to have seen this in person, but I can only imagine how awesome this was. So yeah. So that's one type of wall of sound, right? The Grateful Dead's live sound setup. That was the wall of sound. Another one that I wanted to talk about really quickly is Phil Spector's wall of sound. So if someone says wall of sound, it's not always going to mean the Grateful Dead version. So Phil Spector, he was a producer. I'm sure you guys have heard about him. He's super famous. He worked on everything. But basically, he had a wall of sound. And his wall of sound, it wasn't so much on the live performance side of things. It was on the recording, on the production side of things. So his wall of sound, what he would do is he would bring in, like an orchestra or, performers to perform on an album. And then he would have them record multiple iterations of the part, right? So if he had a whole orchestra doing a part, he would record it once and then he'd go back and record it again and he would layer those. So his wall of sound is just layers upon layers upon layers within the recorded piece, the recorded version of whatever the song was. So, we had the Grateful Dead in the 70s doing the live performance. Before that, we had Phil Spector in the 60s, mostly, to my understanding. I might have that wrong, but I think that's it. So Phil Spector was doing his version of the wall of sound in the recording world in the 60s. And another thing is that Phil Spector's wall of sound was also sometimes called Spectre Sound. So you might hear that term as well. And that's just the same thing, right? So it's the idea of layering like multiple different versions of each instrument to get that like super dense orchestral, like lush sound. And he often did do this with orchestras. So yeah, I'll put a photo or something on the screen here so you can see Phil Spector. It's kind of harder to get a photo of the actual wall of sound, right? Because it was within the actual recording. But I thought it was interesting. So then the third version of the wall of sound that I wanted to talk about today, I'm not as solid on. So I was taught this, but now I'm like looking online and I'm not really finding it. So I'm actually just including this because if anyone else knows of anywhere where I can find confirmation of this or figure this out, I would love to know. So if you could comment in the comments below, that would be great. But this is what I was taught. So grain of salt, but let me know what you guys think. If anyone knows the facts here, because I wasn't able to figure it out. But basically what I was taught was that Alan Blumlein, so Alan Blumlein did a lot of early experimentation with audio, with stereo sound. He's considered like the father of stereo audio to a lot of people. He has his own mic configuration that you guys might be familiar with. I'm sure he has multiple mic configurations, but there's the Blumlein configuration, right? The one that's named after him. But anyway, I heard that he had something called the wall of sound too. And so when he was doing a lot of these early experimentations with stereo and stereo audio, he would do things like he would have a bunch of guys in lab coats, his audio engineers, I don't know why I put that in quotes. They were audio engineers. But he would have them walk around a room, and he would have, microphones and then, another speaker set up somewhere, set up so that you could hear the people moving back and forth. So he was literally figuring out stereo audio and how you can give that sense of space with like multiple microphones or with multiple speakers, stuff like that. So I actually have this article that I'll pull up here. And it's from the EMI archives. So I have this article here. I actually show this to my students because I think it's really interesting and it helps them understand like early stereo audio and the development of that, and then stereo vinyl as well. But this talks about Alan Blumlein a little bit more and about that process. And I just think it's really interesting. So I'm going to put a link to it in the description below for you guys. And it has this video here, which I'm not going to play because I don't know what the legal ramifications are for me playing someone else's video here, but I do recommend checking out this link and seeing how this is how stereo audio is actually done in vinyl. And I think it's really interesting. He had to make this whole like big model just to show the executives so that they could understand what was going on. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. The point is that I'm going to link to this article in the description, and you guys should totally check it out and watch this video. Watch both the videos, because this is kind of showing what I'm talking about with the actual audio engineers walking around the room and figuring out this whole stereo audio system. So Alan Blumlein, he was doing all these experiments with multiple microphones and multiple speakers and figuring out like spatial audio and stereo and surround sound, and he was doing a lot of experiments with that kind of thing. So what I was taught is that he also had his own version of the wall of sound, and what that was it was an experiment. So it's literally a science experiment, an audio engineering experiment, but he took one room and he set up a bunch of microphones kind of like on a plane within the room. So if I set up like a mic here and here and here and here and here, but kind of all within this plane here. I hope that makes sense on the camera. Anyway, if I were to set up those microphones and then he ran them through to another room to where he had a bunch of speakers. So he then used the microphone room to record audio, right? To record people moving around spatially within that room, and then recreate that within the room with the speakers. So it was an early way of conveying the spatial location. I don't know what the best word is, but it was an early way of recreating this spatial sense of where audio was, right? Because back then, he did a lot of these experiments in the 30s, and a lot of audio was still mono. And even way after his experiments, a lot of systems were still in mono. So he was really like one of the early experimenters with stereo audio, and his wall of sound, as I was taught, was part of those experiments. So yeah, I just thought it was really interesting that when people say wall of sound, they might not mean the same exact thing, right? Because there are at least a couple different things that people could mean when they say wall of sound. So I'm not 100% on the Alan Blumlein thing because I wasn't actually able to find much online about it. And I don't know if whatever I found back in the day just disappeared or if it wasn't true to begin with, but I was so sure that that's what I was taught. So I figured I would say something here and see what you guys think. And if anyone can dig anything up, that would be really interesting. But yeah, wall of sound, there are a few different things for it. So there's like science experiments that are wall of sound. There are live show setups that were wall of sound, right? And then there's the recording and production wall of sound. So I just thought that was really interesting. Wanted to share that with you guys. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you guys don't mind that this video is a little less formal, a little bit more of like a chat. But let me know what you think in the comments below about that. So yeah, I don't think I have much else to say about the topic. So as usual, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And if you want to support my channel more directly, I do have that Patreon. So it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. And my patrons do get access to additional content. And I come out with new videos every Wednesday. And thank you for watching. Okay. So I've got little black flecks. I got little specks of black from this thing all over my forehead. So I hope that doesn't bother you guys, because I'm not going to do anything about it. So that's my story. So I found a few images here. Let me just open these up for you. I haven't prepared as well as I would usually prepare today because I had a headache this morning. I'm sorry. All right. That's basically... Oh, there's a bug. What are you doing, little bug? It's okay. Okay, I'll get you. I'll bring you outside in a minute. Stay there. Stay there. Okay, I gotta finish this.